Fishies, back again with another vlog. This is the Isle of Dogs. This is a commissioned vlog for Nick Borovic. Thanks for backing, Nick. So, kind of to preface this off, I have not seen a ton of Wes Anderson movies. In fact, the only one I'm sure I've seen that I'm sure is him is Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I have some idea of that he tends to do very quirky movies, very well, yeah, I think quirky is the word I'm looking for. And certainly this fits that pattern, so did the Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I know him basically as a director of a couple of stop-motion films, and he does very well with both. His use of the medium is fantastic. This movie uses the fact that it's stop-motion extremely well. It manages to take characters and an environment that should be horrific. These are sick and dying dogs in a dump. They're missing patches of fur. You know, they're starving, and that should distract the viewer. That by all rights should disgust the viewer. And instead, it manages to remain through the use of a somewhat muted color palette, and muted's not quite the right word, kind of pastelish, and just the general stylized nature of it to make it charming rather than disgusting. At the same time, it does not shy away from the conceptual horror of what is happening, which is essentially fascistic. The authoritarian state has picked its scapegoat and seeks to ethnically cleanse them, in essence. But it uses the fact that very often animals are better treated in movies than human characters are, and audiences supposedly respond more strongly, more sympathetically to animals than to humans, especially humans from disprivileged minority groups. They use dogs instead to try to create that sympathy. Now, that kind of ties into one of the movie's, actually the movie's biggest flaw. Because, listen to what I just said. The movie is pulling a trick to get audiences to sympathize with members of disprivileged minorities, implying that the audience aren't. It is, in other words, assuming a certain level of privilege in its audience. It's assuming a white audience. It's assuming an audience of people who are unlikely to be targeted by any kind of ethnic cleansing or purge that might occur in this country, or for that matter, might be already occurring, given, you know, kids in concentration camps. Brown kids, specifically. That's... And, frankly, the very obviously building wave of deportations. That's also a form of ethnic cleansing. And it's only a matter of time before the killing starts. And when it does, they're not going to stop at one disprivileged group. They're going to be coming after everybody who is, in any sense, deviant. Whether that is not conforming to white standards of what a body should be. Not conforming to normal white ethnicity, or, anybody who is outside of, cis heteronormativity. And frankly, they'll come up with an excuse to go after Jews. They always do. So this movie knows where we're headed as a country, but it's specifically talking to the people who aren't directly affected by that. And that is something of a flaw in the sense of it doesn't really give that perspective. And this is a problem you always have when you create a fantastical metaphor for real-world oppression, is you erase the very oppression you're trying to talk about. By focusing on a attempt at cleansing a culture of dogs, you give viewers space in which to say, okay, but that's not us. There's the very telling fact that in a movie with one white character, that one white character is the spark that galvanizes the revolution and ends up the leader of the new, or a leader of the new society. And that's a little problematic, and a thing that's pretty obviously building heavily on metaphors from, past racial conflicts. And there really is no other way to read this. It's entirely built around that. At the same time, those are the people who need to hear about this. Those are the people who need to know, yes, it can happen here. This is an example of what it could look like happening. Pay attention, it is happening. Because it's the people, it's the good Germans. The ones who mind their own, the ones who in late 1930s minded their own business and assured themselves that it couldn't really get that bad. Not here, not us. And sat by and let fascism happen. Those are the people that need to hear this. And those are the people likeliest to see this movie, frankly. And those are the people that this movie seems to be talking to. And so, in a sense, that's a good thing. But it's still a little that, the one white American is the biggest hero in the movie. Biggest human hero in the movie, anyway. Otherwise, it's, taking it down from the level of political, it is a fun story about, a group who come together about, that's another issue, though, is the opening suggests that dogs were originally independent and then became, in essence, a slave race. And the main character arc in this movie is a dog who was a stray and therefore was independent, realizing that his desire for, finding these psychological underpinnings of his desire for independence and ultimately becoming a good dog, which is to say a pet. And that's a bit problematic. More than a bit. Because it's again the problem you run into when you try to use fantastical metaphors for real world oppression, is that things become a part of the metaphor that you may not have intended. So, dogs are naturally subservient to humans. We've bred them for that over thousands upon thousands of years. We take care of them, and they provide us with companionship and work. Most of us who keep dogs don't keep them for work anymore, but that's still, you own your dog. That's deeply uncomfortable if you then introduce this idea of dogs having once fought for their freedom and say, no, actually it's better off just, find a nice human and obey them. If you map that onto any of the real world groups that the dogs in this movie function as metaphors of, that's not something you can say. So there's a bit of an issue there. But nonetheless, overall, it is still a really charming movie if you can get past those things. So, yeah. I think that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, essays, let's plays, and more. And I will see you all next time. Bye!